I know I said I wasn't going to do anything special until I hit 1,000 subscribers, but this milestone you can really only hit once. It only lasted for a brief moment, and by the end of the day, I jumped another 20 subs, but for one sweet second, I was at the most metal of milestones. So thank you all, and come join me for my 666 subscriber celebration, the number of the beast. I needed to pick the most metal monsters in my collection, and who's more metal than Skylynx? When I first heard about Commander Class, all I wanted was a Skyfire and a Skylynx, and lo and behold, that's exactly what I got. And while it was a full-on army of bitches to get one, I acquired my Commander Modesty. And he is glorious. Skylynx here poses a little problem for the review though. He takes up so much space in every direction, he fills my entire light box. I definitely need to get a bigger one of these, so don't get too surprised when my set changes up a little bit. Anyways, I don't have a new one right now, so I'm just going to have to make do. So, Skylynx. Here's a little factoid for you. I actually hated Skylynx when I first found out about him in my teens on Wikipedia. It was just kind of based on the fact that he didn't turn into a humanoid form, and I was just kind of prejudiced against the idea at the time, which is crazy to me now because he's like one of my favorite things ever. This mad monster is so sick, I can't even begin to handle it. But it's actually really easy to make him look super stupid like some Seussian creature. Just straighten out the legs and he looks like Thing 1 and Thing 2 in a horse costume. But you know, don't do that. There's just so much going on here, it's hard to know what to talk about when describing his appearance. The best I can do is to say that he's a robo space dragon, and that really only gets you halfway there. His neck looks like exposed mechanical spine, and his colors are saturated and clean. He's got visual punch, and he can break down into two parts with the flick of a switch, which sadly is not all that necessary. And just up front, I hate separating these two. Not because it's not awesome, it's very awesome, but putting these two back together is a bitch. It's so finicky, it never wants to go back together, and it lies to you. You'll go, okay, that worked, and then it just falls apart. There is 0% tactile feedback on the mechanism. Every time you do it, there is no telling if it worked out until it tries to split in half again. Imagine taking two drinking cups and rubbing the sides together, and if you do it right, they're just going to stick together. That's what this feels like. After a small number of steps, you end up with his two bodies, one mind mode, and like this, he's even more of a shelf hogger. The cat mode still looks fantastic, but it's lacking a little something, and that something is a waist hinge crunch. He should bend at the middle so that way his back arches like a cat, because I don't know about you, but I've never seen a cat with a perfectly straight back. His head is great, and I love the collar pieces, but they also crowd him. So even though on paper this part should be incredibly posable, it's kind of not. You can get a tiny amount of tilt, a little up, and the ghost of left or right. It can get a smidge more by swiveling the whole neck to the left or right, but mostly what you are getting with this head is like a dozen varieties of looking down. Now the legs almost offer you too much. The elbows are on some double hinges, but they always want to pop back into straight lines, and the ratchets on them are almost overly strong. Even when combined, this figure is a lot lighter than it looks, so having ratchets that want to shake out your fillings is a little obnoxious. Also, all four legs pop off with very little effort. And the back legs are the worst offenders of all, because try to move them even one click and the cat butt is going to start filleting to pieces. Basically, the only thing holding him together in the rear is the barest amount of friction on some really short tabs. The glorious burb mode also has its own problems. The legs and wings are incredibly loose. Given the opportunity, I've seen the wings literally just fall off their mushroom pegs, and because the thigh rotations on the legs are so loose, it's hard to get him to stand. Plus, they aren't mounted far enough forward, so he's very front heavy. The design of the wings are kind of less than ideal. It's got a giant track running down the middle of it, and I have to think there was a better way to do this. In fact, I can think of a few. This tail also mounts poorly. There should have been a gap in the back so that way the tail could stretch out behind him. The way it is always has to go down on the first segment before arching back up. On a positive note though, his neck is pretty great. It's not the best it could be, but he can do the laughing seagull pose, he can admire his own ass, and in general, it's pretty damn expressive. I think the biggest gripe I have between the two figures is how little his mouth opens. Like, that's it. That's the maximum amount. This is a guy who needs to be able to do atomic breath attacks, but his mouth barely opens far enough for a... Yeah, I know I've been griping a lot, but really it's a bunch of small irritants on a great figure. They just feel like someone drew a mustache on the Mona Lisa. Transformation on these two is stupidly easy, like Legends class easy, but a lot of it is really satisfying, especially Skylynx's neck. And alt mode configuration B is like a launch pad with the world's steepest ramp to load up the shuttle bay. I can't really claim to care much about this alt mode. It just doesn't do anything for me, and that might just be due to how slapped together this thing feels. The shuttle is threatening to topple over just sitting there. I get more fun out of the giant kitty butt cannon than I do this. Also, why are there roads that just lead into walls? Now, while I like the look of the shuttle mode, I also hate handling it, because I'm pretty sure blowing on the wings can probably untab them. Once again, we have tabs that needed to be tall, not long. And once again, it's a problem. Had they been round, I think it would have also prevented any issues. You can literally untransform this part with uncooked spaghetti. Lay the cat's arms along its sides and you got alt mode configuration 1. Personally, I think this would have been better if they did away with the other mode and had this turn into some kind of large rover, but I'm not going to say it's worse for having these two modes. Go through the arduous process of snapping the two together and you get Skylynx's cargo container shuttle delivery mode. That's my best spin on what this could possibly be. Rolls great. You know what's funny is I spent this entire review complaining about all this figure's irritating little foibles, but I do love this thing. It's still one of the crown jewels of my collection. Is it as perfect as some of the other crown jewels? No, not even close. But this thing has tons of potential it's not using. Tighten up the joints that are there, loosen a few others, give it like 2 new ones, and change 4 tabs to pegs, and I wouldn't have anything to complain about. The figure would be basically perfect. And you know what? Right now, it was worth my $80, and it's worth yours too. If you like the Autobot Emperor of the Sky at all, I say grab this while you can. Now you might think I'm done, but I have one other metal beast, and I think it's past due he got his review. So goddamn cute, it hurts! This little guy was my first decadent Transformers purchase. I got him pretty soon after getting back into collecting, right after purchasing my Masterpiece Grimlock. So he'd have been like the 4th figure I picked up after getting addicted to the hobby again. And oh god, I love this thing. It's so cute! I don't even care that he's smaller than my fist and $80. I'm so glad I got this immediately after having gotten the Masterpiece, because this little guy's directions make it clear he's supposed to be a companion piece to that, and it would have been completely lost on me if I hadn't gotten the other first. You can tell by the little comic it comes with, because it highlights the details between the two, that they clearly intended this to be a tiny, adorable version of the Masterpiece specifically. This little guy is heavy, by the way. I swear he's about as heavy as the Masterpiece is, but at 1/4 the size. What's really funny is I actually thought this guy was going to be a lot smaller and lighter before I got him, but he's decently large, and he's got a lot of die-cast. Of course, he's not the most posable thing in the world. I mean, look at him. He's coasting on cuteness, but hilariously enough, I think that he may actually have the most posable dino arms of any Grimlock out there. Head's got a turn but no neck, and because of that, the legs aren't going to get you much. Tail's got an adorable little waggle though. One thing I love about this little guy is his eye-changing gimmick that lets him have a small variety of expressions, all of them dorb as hell. Transformation is both simple and a little frustrating. The legs are an absolute highlight, but maneuvering the torso around his giant noggin is a bit of a chore. And his dino head is on the most unbelievably minuscule pin I have ever seen in my life. And it has to jump over this nub, so it's the most horrifically stressful thing I think any of my Transformers have to go through. Seriously, this could snap so easily. I cut the nub it has to flex over down so much to keep anything bad from happening. Because of that, this is the first figure I ever doctored, and I have no idea whether or not the shoulders are supposed to go up or down. So you go from adorable baby Grimlock to adorable baby Grimlock. I love how even though this figure probably has the largest head of any figure I own, I still think of it as having a tiny head. Anyways, this little head has a version of the eye-changing gimmick the Masterpiece has, though the head itself doesn't really scream Grimlock to me. It's got some similarities to the big guy, but this looks more like a cat than it has the grim look. Posing on this guy doesn't really get any better than it was before. In fact, it might be worse like this. Arms don't even bend 90, shoulders can't even hit the A, legs move not at all unless you do something to the waist I'm not sure is supposed to happen, and the knees do nothing. He does have a tiny little ankle tilt, though it's not like there's really a point. The head does do a good bit more than the dino mode, though. This little guy might have the worst posing in my entire collection, he might have one of the most unnerving transformations, he might not even capture the real spirit of the character, and he is absolutely demanding that you love him based entirely on his personality. And you know what? He's slaying it like a tiny hero. Who would have thought the two most metal beasts in my collection would be a couple of my crown jewels who both cost $80 and put the biggest stupid smiles on my face? And that's not half of what I have to say, but it's enough of what I have to say. And I know you know what everyone else tells you to do at the end of these videos. So if you liked what you saw here, please do that. And if you'd like to take it a step further, then please share this video with any friend you think may be interested. I hope you all enjoyed listening to me waste your time.